It all started on the day the death clock struck 0, which is to say for me that it all started right about
who took the biome matrix we brought with us from Earth.
These are spoken book trailers, and in this episode, we sit down with acclaimed authors Joseph Nassise and Tom Leveen to get a behind-the-scenes scoop on their upcoming novella, built on spoken for spoken. We're pulling out the raw cinematic power of their work to craft their very own spoken book trailer, a high-impact tool designed to amplify their story, elevate their voice, and bring new listeners into their world. This is Spoken into Existence. Welcome to this week's episode of Spoken into Existence. Joshua here from Spoken, and today I'm joined by two of my wonderful partners here, Stacey Smith-Rogers and Patrick Wimp, also from Spoken. And although it might look like we're wearing uniforms, we just actually all decided to dress in black today. A huge part of our job is to work behind the scenes to really spotlight our fantastic authors on the network. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Joseph and Tom, for just lending your talent, your time, and your enthusiasm for Spoken. We're incredibly appreciative, and we're learning a lot about the process from the author's side as far as collaborations go. And one of the questions I had for you guys as authors in this, creating this audio first project, is how this collaboration is different than the ones you may have done before. I know the two of you have worked together before, but if you can just kind of tell us, how is this different and what have you learned in the first stages of this process?
For me, the entire concept and the idea of audio first, like you said, is definitely changed our lexicon, because normally when Joe and I or other authors work together, we're speaking the lexicon of the printed word, which is different than spoken word or an audiobook, right? I'm coming at it from a theater background as a director and as an actor, and Joe's coming at it specifically just from the prose side, and so there's this crossover that we have to talk about, make sure that my words are matching up with what he's thinking, and what he's thinking is matching up with what I'm thinking. So it's this whole different way of communicating. So it hasn't been an extraordinarily difficult thing to do. We've just had to kind of get in sync on, well, when you say this, what do you mean? And we're broadening our horizons that way as well, I'd say.
Yeah, for me, I've had to think about what these characters sound like, which is something I don't normally do. When I had to sit down and kind of parse what my process is, I realized that in my head, all my characters sound the same. And so that forced me, it was like adding another sense. Like, all right, let me tack this on here. And this is how this character sounds. I know that will now always be a part of the toolkit because I'm aware of it, at this point, if that makes sense. Even in the beginning where we had a character chanting at a peace rally, and the way the AI read it was very different from the way Tom heard it in his head, which actually was different than the way I heard it in mine. So we will have to go and play with those controls and fine tune them a little bit, and that's going to be exciting too.
Yeah, I love, Tom, that you mentioned the theater background, because I think this was described as pulling back the curtain on the entire creative process. When this is all put together, how do you feel, from an author's point of view, how do you feel this asset is a benefit for you? And also, how does it serve your readers?
Joe and I both, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but we both tend to come from a place, particularly with independent publishing and having our own imprints, where we see a story as a piece of intellectual property. So here's our IP, right? And I think a lot of creators, a lot of other writers who are new to the industry think of the book and that's it. But when we take something like this and add it to that whole IP, now it's another area that we get to market into. I also think that I don't know what the word is, the technology really behind this, frankly, appeals to a brand new set of people who maybe weren't audiobook listeners prior to this, which I know may seem strange to people who aren't kind of running in those circles, but I really do think there's people who are into I guess the sort of the AI space who are like, wait, you're doing what? And they're going to be interested just on the technology piece alone. and now we get to introduce them to stories that they might have missed otherwise. So I think that's going to be really cool.
IP is the name of the game these days, and so many of our colleagues don't think that way. They think, oh, I got a book, I can put the book out, etc. And I'm like, well, where are our, miniature plaster figurines of all the characters? And, where's the tabletop card game? And how about the tabletop role-playing game? I want, answering machine messages in Sister Mary Agnes's voice. Most writers don't think that way. They think in one kind of vertical silo, and that's it. I didn't tend at first to be an audio listener, and I'm slowly being converted in that direction because I love the process. I love the ability to create multiple voices for our characters, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how our readership responds to that, and and what they say back to us when we're finished.
I think they're going to love it, and I also think this behind the scenes process gives them such a greater insight into your minds. It's another offering. It's another value for your readers, and it's much more valuable than a plastic figurine, I think, or a bookmark, or those are great. But this is a true gift for your readers. So thanks for sharing it with us. I think I want to hear a little bit more about the process that you guys are weaving into. How to bring this to life, because I've really enjoyed so far the trailers that have been made for the behind the scenes and such. So
yeah, we've enjoyed those too.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, the trailers are one way that we've found to be received so positively from the authors who've received them. Stories that really stand out, and to just give those the literal spotlight and marketing material, to really support the author and going out and bringing people to their story, and for us to allow listeners to discover the stories in a novel way. So, of course, we're going to be making one for Sackcloth and Blood. We all work closely on that, but Patrick and I focus more on the production element. So, Patrick, did you want to hop in there and get what we need from Joe and Tom to make it a hit?
Sure, absolutely. I can talk to you guys a little bit through our process, kind of top level, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the, vibrant, wonderful details that'll bring Sackcloth and Blood to life. And so how it'll work is we will typically take both the manuscript and kind of the audio file. And then from there, we will discern okay, what are kind of key, cinematic moments or moments that really embody the spirit of the story, or just, a visual that would, be eye catching and make people want to, read the story or listen to the story. And then we have kind of an array of AI tools that we'll use to generate key images for those things. You guys have seen some of the stuff for the character work. And so similarly, we'll kind of start with images and then move those over to video, kind of bringing them to life. The AI seems to like having a little reference image to start from. Currently, the AI cannot edit for us. So, we'll kind of use our skill set to, create some music, bring in appropriate music, and then, go back and select those key sound bites from the work on spoken to make it feel like the trailer that it is. But I think something that's worth talking about today that kind of puts us in that direction. We'd love for you guys to share, what are some of the kind of key settings and environments that we're going in? I mean, it's modern, it's biblical. There's so much, going on. We've got monsters. So what are some of the places that are bringing this story to life?
Joe and I are both, well, I was going to say I was born and raised in the Phoenix metro area. Joe's been there how many decades?
30 years now.
30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So we've got some pretty deep roots in the American Southwest.
Neat.
And I think it was kind of a very organic choice for us to place some of the action there. Some of the one of the big set pieces toward the end, which is some combat between our humans and demons, is going to be set there. It's such a lush environment. I think people who've never been, the flora and the fauna, everything there's so much to see and to explore. So it makes for a very dynamic and vibrant setting. So that's the one that I naturally gravitate to myself. Joe, is there another one you can think of?
We've got those scenes early on in, kind of the archaeological places, structures, the museum, so that'll play a bit of a role in it. As the series goes on, we are not by any stretch restrained to one location. we finished War. We've been playing a little bit with Pestilence and some of the locations that'll come up. And those are abroad and in other places. And so, as the series grows, we will certainly trot around the globe a little bit to different locations.
I think, Joshua, Patrick, you both mentioned having a film background. If you're an independent creator, if you're, making your own movie or something like that, cost is the number one thing. Like, you have to balance that. Like, well, I want to shoot it in New York City. Well, I live in Phoenix, so we're going to shoot here and save $1 million or whatever. But in audio and in prose, we don't have those restrictions. And so we can go to Egypt, we can go to wherever we want and make these incredibly vibrant areas to play with, which will then show up not only in the story, but in the like trailers that you're talking about, which makes the whole thing so much more fun for everybody.
And without, I don't want to ask this question and risk spoiling some incredible cinematic moments, but if there's one cinematic moment or moment that you believe has the potential to be visually captivating, it might be really interesting to get that so that for anyone following this series, they'll see on the release date, on the final episode, how accurately we brought that to life, or, how it manifested.
As horror writers, we're often on a quest to see if we scare ourselves first, because then we know we've set a good bar for the audience. I don't know about you, Joe. I'm thinking, again, without giving too much away, I can certainly see an image of Moxie, our incarnation of War, kind of at the mouth of a cave, and at the foreground, some kind of limb, very large limb, sort of. That's about, I don't know. That's about all I can give away, Joe. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. That is the scene I was thinking of.
It's
great. I'm glad you set the bar for what to say about it, so I don't say any more than that. But yeah, that'll set the tone for some of the stuff that comes up later on in the rest of the series. So
I know what I'm going to dream about tonight.
So this is a little bit of a fun question, but just to put you on the spot here, both of you, I'll start with Joseph and then go to Tom. If there was a song, could be a classic piece, popular song, or a movie soundtrack that would most accurately be used for the theme of Sackcloth and Blood, what would that be?
Ooh. Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones.
Ooh, nice. And I'm going to go with, the first thing that came to mind was John Carpenter's The Thing. It starts with that dum, 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 like that just recurring. Basically anything John Carpenter has scored, I think, is going to be.
The synth, yep.
Yep. You can just, that, I don't know what he does, man, but he hits those nerves in the back of your neck like nobody else.
As you guys talk about this project that you're doing together, it seems like such a natural collaboration, very easy going. How do you see projects like this? And we want you to do many, many more for us on Spoken, because we are enjoying just being a part of this. So how do you see this project being relevant, maybe as a cornerstone project for writers in your industry and beyond?
First of all, we're all storytellers, like everybody. If you're a human being, you are a storyteller. It's just part of our DNA. But one of the walls people seem to keep crashing into is they equate storytelling with a novel, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Particularly with the advent of cell phones. I mean, you have a movie studio, an audiobook studio. You have everything in this little device that you can tell a story in virtually any manner you can think of. When you factor in the technology that we're dealing with on Spoken, it's like when synthesizer keyboards first came out. Like, you just press a button and now it's a piano, and now it's a harpsichord, and now it's a violin. And now, like, the possibilities became endless. And so I think reaching particularly new or younger storytellers with this technology and giving them those keys to hit is going to then in turn trigger ideas that wouldn't have maybe happened if they were focused on, I need to write a novel. But now that we're working with this and we're seeing all the different avenues we can pursue on Spoken, like, I can do a radio drama type thing. I can do this. I can do that. So I think it's going to open up things that the five of us have not even envisioned yet. I'm that some kid out there is going to be like, oh, you know what? And we're going to be blown away by what they come up with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100% agree with Tom. I find, and we're guilty of not looking beyond the norm and beyond the expected
Mm-hmm.
until someone else does it. And then we see, it's like, oh, we can do it that way? Like, that's kind of cool, and in the old days, audiobooks were just, one voice reading the story, and that was fine for everybody. And then a few companies came along and put original music behind them and, and gave multicast narrations. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we can do that. Wow, that's great. What else can we do? And so I think the discovery will be a boon for other authors and creators, for that matter, as they see what the technology allows us to be capable of, and then spurs us in new directions.
But the other thing about your question, though, I think is, if I'm not mistaken, we can also upload audio, right? So for someone like me who's a theater kid, half the time I write by wandering around my kitchen and just talking out loud. And so it's just occurring to me when we talk about what else can we do with this? Like, cool, I'm going to record myself putting on my own little play on my phone while I'm on a hike, and then come home, upload it, assign the voices, and an hour later I have a full cast audiobook for my podcast. Like, I didn't even think about that until right now. So who knows where this is going,
There's so much to work with. I think that, because to my knowledge, I didn't necessarily fully know about the like American Southwest aspect. And I think that that's, obviously, like, you have desert and rock and, all of these things that are really one. So I feel like you're probably, in terms of locations, this idea of a cave, I can picture, what's War's name? Moxie, right? It's Moxie.
Moxie Kirk, yeah, correct.
So Moxie kind of standing before the cave, about to enter. Obviously, they have that specific image of lopping some kind of monster's arm off or whatever.
What might be interesting with that too is like a desert flower, because Moxie is a teenage girl.
Sure.
And she's a tough, badass teenage girl, but there is that contrast with the cactus and the flower and that might be an interesting element.
That's fantastic, because sometimes those elements are hard to find, like the just kind of little detail flourishes. That's really great.
I'm getting a little bit of when I hear desert and punk and desert flower, I'm getting a little bit of Mad Max.
Furiosa.
I'm getting a little Furiosa. What are you guys thinking in terms of music? I mean, he mentioned, Tom mentioned John Carpenter. Joe mentioned Rolling Stones.
Sure, which aren't, necessarily together on the spectrum. I mean, I was really drawn to the John Carpenter of it all. I think that presents like a wide palette to work within. Obviously, we kind of favor instrumental, but, Sympathy for the Devil in particular has kind of almost like chanting quality. Like, there's the humming aspects to it. So there's a movie that's not as famous, John Carpenter's Vampires. Have you ever seen that or heard of that? Like, it's that's like an American Southwest, like crazy vampire horror action thing.
That might be a good place to get some inspiration, just to play
just kind of like see
those
what vibe
couple of those songs. Yeah.
And I mean, of course, we're gonna have to hear the story to know, which parts we're gonna pull out for dialogue. What does your intuition tell you for framing this as a trailer? Do we want to focus on like bringing one scene to life as, fluid as possible with character consistency, or more of like a montage? Because we go back and forth sometimes,
Yeah, we really have varied, kind of depending on sometimes length of story or whatever. I guess my like first blush is kind of towards that. Like, there's so many interesting images. It might be cool to kind of like use that to really sell it, kind of.
What also might be interesting is from her perspective. It's like not showing her, but walking in her shoes and how she sees things. And it might be very surprising at the end. Then you just come back and show this teenage girl who is facing all this.
If you really wanted to commit to that kind of bit, it's like your last thing could be like reflection in a pool of water, reflection in a pool of blood, reflection in a mirror. You know, maybe we use a mirror at some point to catch like a bit of her, but not the whole thing. You know, the AI doesn't hallucinate and freak out, but you know, I think that like that could be kind of a cool reveal, right? It's like, I don't know, we're dragging this monster arm, and then, you know, she looks down into the reflection and she's kind of like dirty and badassery and what have you.
Make sure to follow along as this one-of-a-kind story takes shape. You'll find new behind-the-scenes episodes right here, plus bonus content all throughout the series. Follow us on socials at spoken.press, and be sure to follow the authors too, at Tom Leveen and at Nassise on X. Joseph and Tom are also on Facebook, at joseph.nassise and author Tom Leveen. Or you can join the discussion in our communities over on Reddit and Discord. We'd love to hear your thoughts as the story unfolds. This is Storytelling Reimagined, and we're just getting started.